Hello and welcome to the workshop. I'm Rosie from Hope for the Future. Hope for the Future is a charity. We care a lot about climate change and we want to help people like you do something about it. Before we learn about what we can do about climate change, we need to know what climate change actually is. Put your hand up if you've heard of climate change before. Okay, hands down. For those of you that have heard of it before, and for those of you that haven't, we're going to have a quick climate change quiz. You can vote for your answer in the quiz by putting your hand up when you think the correct answer is called. So, let's start up with question 1. This is a true or false question. Have a look at the statement on the board. It says, humans are responsible for climate change. Put your hand up if you think it's true that humans are responsible for climate change. Okay, hands down. Now put your hand up if you think that this is false and that humans aren't responsible for climate change. And hands down. The correct answer was true. Humans are responsible for climate change. The reason for this is that we are burning lots and lots of things called fossil fuels every day. When we burn fossil fuels, they release gases called greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases get trapped in the Earth's atmosphere and are really harmful, and these are the things that are causing climate change. This brings us on to our next question. How do greenhouse gases cause climate change? On the board, there are 2 possible answers to this question. Answer A is that greenhouse gases cause climate change by running into rivers and polluting the water. And answer B is that greenhouse gases get trapped in the Earth's atmosphere and cause the planet's temperature to get hotter. Have a little think about which of these answers you think is the right one. Now, put your hand up if you think option A is the right answer and that greenhouse gases cause climate change by running into rivers and polluting the water. And hands down. Now put your hands up if you think option B is the right answer and that greenhouse gases cause climate change by getting trapped in the Earth's atmosphere and causing the planet's temperature to get hotter. And hands down. The correct answer was option B. Well done if you got it right. So, what we've learned so far is that greenhouse gases are causing climate change by getting trapped in the Earth's atmosphere and causing the planet's temperature to get hotter. And the reason that greenhouse gases are getting released into the Earth's atmosphere in the first place is because humans are burning lots and lots of fossil fuels that release them. This brings us on to question number 3. Okay, question 3. Which of these activities involve burning fossil fuels? Have a look at all of the activities on the board and have a think about which one includes burning fossil fuels. Your options are A, farming animals, B, driving in a car, C, building houses, or D, all of these activities involve burning fossil fuels. So, now you've had a chance to think, put your hand up if you think the answer is A, farming animals. And hands down. Put your hand up if you think the answer is B, driving in a car. Hands down. And hands up if you think the answer is C, building houses. Hands down. And hands up for option D, and you think all of these activities involve burning fossil fuels. And hands down. The answer was option D. Actually, all of these activities involve burning fossil fuels. So when people farm animals, drive a car, or build a house, they are all releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And these greenhouse gases are causing climate change and making the Earth heat up. How are you doing with the quiz so far? Are you ready for the final question? Question 4 is another true or false question. Have a look at the statement on the board. It says, the effects of climate change are already happening in this country. Do you think this is true or false? Put your hand up if you think it is true that the effects of climate change are already happening in this country. And hands down. Now put your hand up if you think it is false and that the effects of climate change aren't already happening in this country. And hands down. The answer was true. We are already seeing the effects of climate change in this country. One of the biggest effects of climate change we're seeing in this country is flooding. Over the past 10 years, we've had lots and lots of extreme floods, and there have been so many that it's actually turned into a pattern. The changes in our atmosphere created by the greenhouse gases that come from burning fossil fuels mean that we're getting lots and lots more rain than we're used to in the autumn and winter months. And because we're not used to the rain and we don't know how to cope with it, we're having lots and lots of floods too. Even people's houses are getting flooded because of climate change. And experts say that if we carry on burning fossil fuels and releasing greenhouse gases, the floods are only going to get worse. So climate change is actually very important, and it's becoming more and more important that we take action on it soon to help stop the effects from getting even worse. I'm here today to talk about one of the things that we can do to help stop climate change. There are a group of people who have a lot of power to make important decisions, and I want to think about how we can talk to these important decision makers about climate change. The people that I want to talk to you about that can make these important decisions are called MPs. You might have heard of MPs before on the television or the radio, or maybe you've heard adults talking about them. You might also never have heard of them before. That's okay too. The letters MP stand for Member of Parliament. Parliament is the name for a large building by the river in London where MPs work and where their offices are. This is why they're called Members of Parliament. An MP's job is very important. If you're an MP, that means it's your job to help make the laws for the whole country. Laws include things like making stealing illegal, or saying that we need to drive on the left-hand side of the road, and making free school meals available to people in reception, year 1 and year 2. All of these things are laws that were made by MPs. We actually have 650 MPs across the whole country who work together to help make all of our laws. All of these 650 MPs will vote on whether they think a law should get passed or not. And if the law does get passed, then everyone in the country has to follow it. So MPs are involved in making really big decisions that affect everybody. So as a collective, they have quite a lot of power. But you actually have a lot of power too. You might be confused how, but I'll explain. People get to become an MP by getting voted into the job. So everyone over the age of 18 gets to vote for their MP about once every 5 years, which means that adults get to cast their vote and take part in deciding who they want to be responsible for making the laws for the country. This is something that you're going to get to do too when you turn 18. But even though you're not 18 yet, you still get to have a say over what MPs do once they've been elected. Do you remember how we have 650 MPs for the whole country? Well, each one of those 650 MPs is responsible for a different area of the country. One MP will be responsible for people in an area of London, while another MP will be responsible for people in an area of Sheffield. This means that you all will have an MP who represents your part of the country, and they will represent all of the people living in that part of the country, regardless of how old they are. So, because you live in that part of the country that your MP represents, that means that your MP has to represent you too, as you're one of the many people living there. Your MP can actually represent you in lots of different ways. The most important way they can do this is by listening to you. If you make time to talk to your MP, they should listen to your beliefs and take these beliefs into account when they're making laws with the other MPs. Representing your opinions is the most important part of an MP's job. They are there to work for you and to pass the laws that you care about. If you're struggling to imagine who MPs are or what they might look like, here are some MPs that you might have heard of before. This is Boris Johnson. He's an MP and represents an area of London called Uxbridge. Boris Johnson is also the Prime Minister. This is Keir Starmer. He's an MP and represents an area of London called Holborn and St Pancras. This is Louise Haigh. Louise is an MP and she represents all the people in the Heeley area of Sheffield. Louise Haigh is the MP that you're going to meet on Thursday, and she's the person that you'll be asking your questions to in the Q&A. Now we know a bit more about who MPs are, you're going to do some individual work to see how much you can remember. Everyone should have a sheet with questions about MPs. If you finish your questions and still have some time left, then there is space at the bottom for you to write something else you would like to know about being an MP that we've not already spoken about today. You'll have 10 minutes to work through your sheet. Remember to put your name at the top. Your time starts now. You're halfway through your time. You have 2 minutes left. You have 30 seconds left. Remember to put your name at the top of your sheet. And time's up. Let's go through your answers. Mark your sheet as we go. Question 1. MP is short for Member of Parliament. Question 2. There are 650 MPs in the country. Question 3. An MP's job is to make laws that affect the whole country. Question 4. People over 18 vote to choose which MP they want to represent them. Question 5. Anyone of any age gets to have their views represented by their MP. Question 6. The most important part of an MP's job is to represent your views. And question 7. The person in the picture is Louise Haigh MP. So, how did you do? Did anyone get 7 out of 7? So, now we've learned about climate change and about MPs, we can also learn about how MPs can help us do something about climate change. If we want to do something about climate change, then it's really, really important that we work with our MPs. We already know that burning fossil fuels causes climate change because the fuels release greenhouse gases when they're burned, and these gases get trapped in the Earth's atmosphere and increase the planet's temperature. So, this teaches us that to stop climate change, we also need to stop burning fossil fuels. This will mean those harmful greenhouse gases will stop getting released. and that the Earth's temperature will stop rising. It will also mean that flooding in this country will stop becoming so extreme. So, we know it's really important to stop burning fossil fuels. But how can we actually make sure that people stop burning them? It's a really good start if everyone in the classroom today leaves and decides to stop doing activities that involve burning fossil fuels. But there are only so many of us here. And even though everyone's actions do help to make a difference, we would need a lot more people to start taking action for our difference to really be big enough to stop climate change. In other words, the more people that stop burning fossil fuels, the better. And this is where our MPs can be really helpful to us. Do you remember that part of an MP's job is to help pass laws that affect everyone in the UK? Well, there are currently over 67 million people living in the UK, which is a lot more people than are in your classroom or tuning into this workshop. But this is really good news. This means that our MPs can help us reach all of those 67 million people. Imagine if 67 million people were able to stop burning fossil fuels. MPs can pass laws to help us make this happen. One thing MPs could pass a law about would be to make sure that all kinds of transport, like buses and cars, run on renewable energy sources. This would mean that every one of the 67 million people in the UK could travel to school or work, or even just to see their friends, without having to burn fossil fuels. So this is why it's really important for us to talk to our MPs if we want to help do something to stop climate change. We can encourage them to listen to our views and to pass laws that are friendly to the environment and that help to stop climate change. Above all else, you need to remember that your MP is there to represent you. So this is something that you can talk to your MP about, no matter how old you are. We're going to start thinking about what questions you want to ask Louise Haigh at the Q&A on Thursday. Louise is an MP, so she will be able to help with lots of the questions and thoughts you have about climate change. You can work in groups or as a class to put all of your questions into the online form that is linked on the board. If you're stuck for any questions to ask, then think about everything we've spoken about today, about climate change and being an MP. Is there anything that you would like to know more about? There are also some suggestions of questions you might like to ask on the online form too. Remember to put your name next to your question and your school name at the top of the form. You have 30 minutes to write your questions and can work in groups or as a class. Your time starts now. You're halfway through your time. You have 10 minutes left. You have 5 minutes left. Now is a good time to start thinking about finishing off your questions and submitting them. You have a minute left. And time's up. please remember to put your school name on your online form and click Submit. Thank you all so much for coming along to this workshop with Hope for the Future. On Thursday, we'll be talking to Louise Haigh MP, and I'll be asking her some of your questions. I look forward to seeing you all then.